I had a question about the test next Tuesday. Someone asked me, wait, what did you ask me?
I said, is there a study guide?
Is there a study guide? There's not a study guide. And the reason being, if we go to type of question, let's say a section. Let's see here, let's say 2.1, right? There's, let's say, 3 types of questions about circles I could ask. And I could ask any of them. But if I put a study guide, I would put all 3 of them. So that means my study guide would be as long as all your homework's put together, essentially. Because if I put just one of them, then what happens if I ask you a different one? It's not on the test. The other thing, this is a test I gave last year, but it turns out because of the new book and the new ordering of things, it's really half of my first 2 tests. So I posted my first 2 tests and I crossed out the problems that aren't relating. On here, there are 9 questions relating to what we've covered. And I've crossed out the ones that won't be on there. And on the next test too, there are 7, which makes it 16 questions. That would be too long for a test, probably closer to 12 to 15 questions. I will grade any questions you bring to me, but I don't have time to grade everyone's practice tests yet. Sure. This is a 2-for-1 lecture, meaning we're covering 2.4 and 2.5 because it's all about straight lines. And I think you guys are pretty good at straight lines. You know how to graph them? Okay, let's review it. A linear function, instead of y, we now are comfortable with functions, so I put f of x. Okay with that? All right, what's the domain of straight lines? It depends. Okay. What linear function does not have domain? It's all real numbers. Yeah, good. A straight up and down line. Okay, these lines have different slopes, and this m denotes the slope. We might have a positive slope, which means going from left to right is going up. That look familiar? Okay. Going right to left, it would be going down, but that's not what we're talking about. Left to right only. Increase in x values, is it increasing y or not? Okay, negative slope going left, it is decreasing or going lower. What about zero slope? Horizontal, it is not increasing, it is not decreasing. And undefined is a vertical line because you could describe that slope as infinitely steep. Infinity is not a number, so we say it's undefined. The first thing we're interested in is this ratio of rise over run, which represents the slope of the line. Rise meaning change in y values, and run meaning change in x values. How do you find the change? Let's say someone is now 28 years old. We want to know how much has their age changed since they were 13 years old. How can you determine that change in age? Subtract, yes, 28 minus 13 is 15. How do we do this change in y values? You subtract the y values. What's the change in x values? You subtract the x values. Okay, any questions about this? Can you find the slope between the ordered pairs 2, -3, -1, -6? We just need a label, x1, y1, x2, y2. Then what is the slope? y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. So y2, -6 minus what? -3 over -1 minus. Are there any questions about this? Okay, what's -6 minus -3? It's -3, that's right. And on the bottom, -1 minus -2. What's -3 over -3? The slope of 1. All right, any questions about this? I have a question. What if I switch to order pairs? Doesn't matter. How would my computation be different? So what if I had it opposite? -3 minus -6. It would be a +3 instead of a -3. But yeah, I'd have to switch the 2 and the 1, and I'd get +3. So instead of -3 over -3, I'd have +3 over +3, but my slope would be the same. So the good news is, doesn't matter. You just can't confuse the x and y's. What's the only way I can mess this up? -6 minus -3 over 2 minus -1. That's the only way I can mess it up. What did I do? I associated -6 with 2, which is the wrong ordered pair. As long as you label x1, y1 as the same ordered pair, x2, y2 is the other ordered pair, you'll be okay. That would give you the answer that's the opposite sign, -1, which is wrong, instead of positive. All right, can you find the slope between the other 2 points? What is it? Undefined. Okay, why do you say it's undefined? Can't divide by 0, yes. The calculator will explode, right? But in this case, x1, y1, x2, y2, the slope is equal to 1 minus -3 over 3 minus 3. 4 over 0 is undefined. It's undefined slope, can't divide by 0. Looking at the ordered pairs, if they have the same x values, obviously one will be on top of the other. And therefore it would be a vertical line with undefined slope. Any questions? This is a review, right? Okay. Horizontal lines. Any horizontal line have all the same height, the same y value. When you have y's equal to a constant, it's going to be a horizontal line. Vertical lines have the same horizontal positioning, that is the x value is constant. Can you graph y equals 3 for me? So y equals 3. Every ordered pair has the same height. For instance, 0, 3, 1, 3, 2. We have a horizontal line with 0 slope. Another way to think of it is y plus 0x. So you can see the slope is 0. Any questions about this? How do I graph x is equal to -4? X equals -4. You could write maybe x plus 0y is equal to -4 to see that no matter what I plug in for y, my x value is always -4. So if y is 5, x would be -4. Or if y is -3, x would be -4. And so we get a vertical line to graph x equal -4. Let's use the slope-intercept form to graph linear functions. First, we want slope-intercept form, which means solve for y, or f of x in function form. Then you want to plot the y-intercept and count off the slope from left to right. So first thing, how do we solve for y? Yeah, subtract 3x from both sides. 2y is equal to -3x plus 4. Then we do what? Divide by 2. Y is equal to, and we split this up into -3 halves x. Are you guys comfortable with that? Or -3x over 2 plus 4 over 2, which we can also write as -3 halves times x plus 2. So we always plot the y-intercept first in this form. When x is 0, what do we get for y? So we always plot that point 0, 2 first. Then we'll use the slope to count off. All right, you want to take the time to make all the tally marks evenly spaced. And we first plot the y-intercept 0, 2. And from there, how do we get other points? The slope. Okay, so if the slope is equal to -3 halves, how do we count off? Either do what? Okay, so for -3 halves, I can put the negative on top, or I could put the negative on the bottom. So if that negative's on top, that means down 3. And the positive on the bottom means right 2. So I can count off 1, 2, 3 down, 2 to the right to get my next point. I continue doing that. 1, 2, 3, 2. And how many points should I draw? 2 or 3. 2 determine a line, but it just depends on the context. If you want to be more accurate, graph more points. How many points do calculators draw? Yeah, like hundreds probably. Because they're dumb, but you're smart. So you only need 2 or 3. If I want to find where lines intersect, one problem that occurs is someone will draw a wonky line and another wonky line, and it's hard to see where they intersect, in which case you'd want to draw more points up to where they're intersecting, just to make sure it's more accurate. If I put the negative sign on the bottom, then this means I'm going up 3 and left 2. Up 1, 2, 3, left 1, 2. And hopefully they form a straight line. If they don't, you either counted wrong or your graph is not scaled properly. You might have weird spacing. Okay, any questions about this? So hopefully that's a review, graphing straight lines. How do we graph y is equal to x? What's my y-intercept? If x is 0, yeah, y would be 0. So it passes through the origin. Maybe let's plot that. Let me try to draw perpendicular lines. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. Okay, we passed through the origin, so let me plot that point. And what's my slope? As a fraction, 2/1, which means I go which direction? So positive up 2, and positive means right 1. So I go up 2, right 1, up 2, right 1. But if we want to reverse it, I could write it as -2 over -1, meaning down 2, left 1, down 2, left 1. And if you did things right, these should be in a straight line. Any questions about this? All right, so this is more of a new concept. That is, how do you find the average rate of change? Suppose that points x1, y1, x2, y2 are on the graph of a function f. Using function notation, these would be the points x1, f of x1 would be your y value. And the points x2, f of x2. So I hope we're getting comfortable with using f of x instead of y. This is our first point, x1, f of x1. And this is our second point, x2, f of x2. We might have a function that's curvy, the blue one. The rate of change would be change in y over change in x. It's the slope. And you might say, it's really steep over here. See that the blue line is really steep over here? And it's less steep over here. Does that make sense? But we'd like to know the average steepness. So can you imagine this line as I go along here, changing in steepness? It turns out that average steepness is the slope of this secant line straight through it. And that's quite useful. For instance, let's talk about one hypothetical example. If you drive a car, we might say the x-axis would be distance or time. Maybe we'll say we usually like miles per hour. Let's say time. And the y-axis might be distance. Maybe we'll call it y. Yeah, let's still call it x and t, y and t. Okay, what's the curve? Usually start at 0 times 0 distance has been traveled. And when you take off from a stoplight, what's the curve? Is it curving up, curving down, or is it straight? I guess it depends who's driving, right? Usually we're accelerating, acceleration. So it usually curves up like this. You make a trip, if you're accelerating the whole time, then the question would be, what's your average rate? In this case, we would say, what's your average speed? And you could do that by doing y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. Okay, so we want to find the slope of a line through 2 points, the starting point and the ending point. Now will give us the average rate of change in between. Okay, so do you recognize this formula? Y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1? Okay. We're just reapplying it to average rate of change problem between a starting point and an ending point. Sorry, starting point and ending point. Let's try an actual problem that you might see on the homework. Determine the average rate of change of blood alcohol level from x1 equals 0 to x2 is equal to 1. Can you identify the corresponding order pairs? Okay, so what's the first order pair corresponding to x1 is equal to 0? Very good. 0, 0 is our first one. So let's call that x1, y1. And what's our next order pair? Very good. We'll call this x2, y2. So what is the average rate of change? It's equal to y2 minus over x2 minus x1. In this case, let's go ahead and plug in 0.06 minus 0 over 1 minus. Okay, so we get 0.06 over 1. And the numerator is BAC, blood alcohol concentration, over the time in hours. Can you tell me the blood alcohol concentration increase? That rate is positive. Now, here's another crazy concept. All I care about is the start point and the ending point. So what if my blood alcohol concentration went up and back down and back up? It has the same starting and ending point. The blue line and my green line have the same average rate of change. Isn't that crazy? It's a little bit mind-blowing, but it is true. All right, let's try part B. From 1 hour to 2 hours, what's my average rate of change? Maybe I'll use m this time to note the slope. It would be what minus what? Close. I guess I said it doesn't matter. So if you want to do 0.06 minus 0.09, you just need to make sure to do what minus what? 1 minus 2. Okay, you'll still get the same answer? Yes, but according to the formula, we tend to write it this way. So I'll just write it this way also. 0.09 minus 0.06 over 2 minus 1. Anyway, on the bottom, in the first case, you'll get negative over negative. In the second case, you would get positive 0.03 over 1. And that's the average rate of change of the blood alcohol concentration per hour, per single hour. Okay, any questions about this? Anytime it's asking for average rate of change, y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. Okay, part C, can we interpret this result? We say that the blood alcohol concentration rose by an average of 0.06% per hour for the first hour. We say that the blood alcohol concentration rose by an average of 0.03% per hour for the second hour. So we do this when we don't really care what happens in between. We just care about the average rate of change. You just need to know two values. Any questions about this? Section 2.5, applications of linear equations and modeling. One skill is, can you come up with the equation line given only some of the information? Are you familiar with the point slope formula? Notice this looks very similar to m is equal to y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. The only difference is we changed x2 and y2 into variables, y and x. So the solution actually represents an entire line instead of just another single point. All right, let's use this formula. Y minus y1 is equal to m times x minus x1 to come up with the equation of the line. What is my y1? The equation has slope -3 passing through 5. -1 is correct. What is my x1? -5. And what is my slope? -3. And we'll solve for y. Y plus 1 is equal to -3 times x plus 5. Distribute the -3. Y plus 1 equals -3x minus 15. And subtract 1. -3x minus 16. So what two pieces of information do I need to find the equation of the line? The slope of the line and any points on the line. Any point, right? So for the next one, find the equation of the line passing through 2 points. What do I need to find? I need to find the slope. Because I have 2 points on the line, I only need 1, so it remains to find the slope. How do you find the slope? Very good. So y2 minus y1 will say -8 minus -6 over 2 minus 5. -8 plus 6 is -2. 2 minus 5 is -3. We have a slope of 2/3 to plug in for m. What point do I use for y1? -6? Yeah, and we could use either point. And since you said -6, I'm going to use it. Y minus -6 is equal to 2/3 times x minus what? And since I use -6, I must use the corresponding 5. Has to correspond to the same ordered pair, x1, y1. So we solve. Y plus 6 is equal to 2/3 x minus 10/3. We can subtract 6 from both sides. Y is equal to 2/3 x minus 10/3 minus 6 common denominator multiplied by 3/3. What's -10 minus 18? -28/3. Are there any questions about this? So if I use 2 -8, would I get the same answer? Yes, you should. You want to try it? Go for it. I'm not in the mood right now. Okay, the terms parallel and perpendicular compare the slopes of lines. So what do you know about parallel lines? They'll never cross and they have the same slope. So if I write the equation of one line, y is equal to m1 x plus b1. Y is equal, the second equation, y is equal to m2 x plus B2. M1, M2, B1, B2 represent slopes and y-intercepts of different lines. Parallel lines have the same rate of change. That is, M1 is equal to M2. We'll want to memorize that. Parallel lines have the same slope. Okay, what about perpendicular lines? That's right. So if these lines intersect at a right angle, and I write one equation as y is equal to m1x plus b1, y is equal to m2x plus b2. They're called negative reciprocals. Why is this true? That is beyond the scope of this class. Take some higher level math to prove why it's true, but we'll just memorize it because it's an easy property. M1 is equal to the negative reciprocal of the other. All right, any questions about this? Or another way to check is they multiply together to make -1. Find the equation line that's parallel to x plus 3y is equal to 4 and passes through -3, -1. It's asking for equational line. So I need what pieces of information? I need slope and any point. Very good. I know the point, -3, -1. How do I find the slope of line parallel to the one given? Solve for y. Let's subtract x from both sides. 3y is equal to -x plus 4. Divide by 3. Y is equal to -1/3 x plus 4/3. Okay, so what's the slope of the line I want to find? Yes. M1 is equal to -1/3. So a parallel line has the same slope. M's equal to -1/3. We just want to keep the slope. So the equation of my line, y minus y1 is equal to, maybe I'll write y1, m times x minus x1. So y minus -1 is equal to -1/3 times x minus -3. Y plus 1 is equal to -1/3 x. We have the not too rare triple negative, which makes it negative or positive? -1. We subtract 1 from both sides. -1/3 x minus 2. Any questions about this? So let me draw what we just did here. Okay, this first line, y equals -1/3 x plus 4/3. It has a y-intercept of 4/3 and a slope of -1, right, 3. So this is my first line. Then we plot a point -3, -1. -3, -1 is this point here. And we just came up with an equation of a line that has the same slope. This is the equation we found. Any questions about that? Another way to think of this is we had a line given. There are infinite lines parallel to the green line. So to narrow it down to one equation, we needed 1 point because there's only one parallel line that passes. For the next example, find the equation line that's perpendicular to y equals 2x minus 5 and passes through 3, -4. Okay, I graph this line, y is equal to 2x minus 5. We have a point 3, -4. So how many lines are perpendicular to the green line? Infinite. How many pass through that red dot? Only one. So we're finding the equation of this line that passes through 3, -4. So I have a point on my line. I need to find the slope. How do I find the slope if I have the slope of the green line? The slope of the green line is 2. What's the slope of the purple line? Very good. The negative reciprocal. So this is 2 over 1. The reciprocal of 2 over 1 is 1/2. Then you make it opposite sign. Any questions about that? If you have a problem doing reciprocals where you flip a fraction and change the sign, another way to think of it is m1 times m2 is equal to -1. And we can say, I know this is 2, so what's my other slope? I divide by 2. So m2 is equal to -1/2. Y minus, what's y1? Yes, -4. We'll put in parentheses so we don't have the double negative next to each other. And our slope, we said, is -1/2. The most common mistake I get is people write 2 there. So this is our slope, and x1 is 3. x1, y1. Y plus 4 is equal to -1/2 x plus 3/2. We'll subtract 4 from both sides. So 4 is the same as 4 over 1. We'll get a common denominator and multiply by 2 over 2. Y is equal to -1/2 x. We have 3 minus 8 minus 5/2. Any questions about this? This is -1/2 x plus 3/2 minus 8/2 is -5/2. All right, next we'd like to create a linear function to model data. So I did write skip, but actually this will be useful. We should skip this portion. You won't be asked questions on the revenue cost functions. So a cost function, because it's linear, will have a slope and a y-intercept. And we call the y-intercept the fixed cost. And we call the slope the variable cost. It depends on the variable. All these equations will be the same, of the form C is equal to mx plus b. A family cell phone plan costs $130 per month for 4 lines. Each additional line costs $19.99 per month. Write a cost function to model this. So which one is our fixed cost? No, that's our variable cost. So the $130 is the cost per month no matter what. Okay, and so you pay $19.99 more per additional line. Okay, so in this case, we say this is equal to mx plus b, and our fixed cost is 130, so plug it in here. And our variable cost, 1990, we plug in for m, 1999. So this is how we model it. And maybe beforehand, you should specify what your variable represents. And x is the additional family members added beyond the first 4. So that's our variable. Okay, evaluate C of 3. So this is part A. Part B, C of 3, we just plug in 19.99 times 3 plus 130. So 20 times 3 is 60. We'll take away 3 cents. So that would be $59.97 plus 130 is equal to $189.97. So this will be the monthly cost if you have 7 family members. So this is 3 extra lines. So monthly cost for 7 lines would be $189.97. That sound fair? Expensive, cheap? I don't know. All right, I did want to get to one homework problem that you'll see that might be a little bit tricky. Determine if the function is linear, constant, or neither. What do you know about linear functions? straight lines, and the exponent of your variable is 1. What do you know about constant functions? They're, yeah, straight horizontal though, right? Not going up or down. Constant functions are horizontal, but really y is equal to a constant number. So there's no variable, right? Constant, no variable. And neither would be anything else. So x has exponent 1. So A, is it linear, constant, or neither? Very good. Constant. B, linear. Yes, very good. Y equals mx plus b is linear. Part C, neither. X on the denominator is a lot like -2 x to -1. The exponent's not 1, it's -1. So this is neither. And D, very good, linear. Y equals mx plus b. I'm sorry, there's one thing, 5 seconds. Linear equation in standard form. So you have y is equal to mx plus b as slope intercept. You also have ax plus by is equal to c. And you want to eliminate all decimals and fractions if you can.